Hello, welcome to Miss Hodgson's online kitchen class. Today we're going to be making donuts, which I'm very excited about. 200 grams of strong bread flour, 100 millilitres of milk, 1 free-range egg whisked up, 50 grams of butter cut into small chunks, 7 grams of yeast, which is also a sachet of yeast, 15 grams of caster sugar, 100 grams of caster sugar with a teaspoon of cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Equipment you need is 1 small knife, 1 teaspoon, 1 little cutter that's about 4 centimetres. If you can't get hold of one of those, then you may have to improvise and use something else around your house or around your kitchen that's the same size. A baking tray with some baking paper on, preferably a large one, a wooden spoon and a large bowl. A saucepan with some oil in, only put in about 3 or 4 centimetres worth of oil because it's very, very dangerous when you're using the hot oil. So I'm just going to reiterate the fact that it's very dangerous and to only put in about 4 centimetres of oil. A small pan for melting the milk and the butter in. The first thing you need to do is get your small pan, measure out your 100 ml of milk, put your milk in, put your butter in, and it's a lot easier to melt if it's chopped up, and also 15 grams of sugar, and only heat the milk up until the butter's melted. Don't bring it to the boil, you only want the milk to be warm. You need to sieve 200 grams of strong bread flour into the larger bowl. Now, the reason we use strong bread flour is, if we have a look on the cupboard, is it contains a protein called gluten, which is amazing for bread making. So it's really high in gluten compared to other types of flour. And gluten is 2 different proteins called gliadin and glutenin. And then when you add a liquid, so in this case, it's going to be the milk, they combine together and make gluten. So gliadin looks like this, glutenin looks like this, and the combination of the 2 looks like that. And it's like a spring. So when you're kneading the bread, it's like a spring. So that's why it's really, really important to have flour that's high in gluten for bread making. I measured out my yeast, so I've got 7 grams of yeast here. That needs to go into the flour, and yeast is one of the most important ingredients because it's the thing that makes the bread rise. So here, so the yeast needs heat and it needs liquid because it's a microorganism, so it comes alive as soon as it has heat and liquid, and it also feeds off sugar. So there's sugar in the flour and there's also sugar in the milk, and then it gives off alcohol and carbon dioxide, and it's the carbon dioxide that's the air, and that's what makes the bread rise. So you're kneading the bread, and then the yeast is giving off carbon dioxide, and then that's going to make the bread rise. The butter's now melted into the milk, and I have to admit, when I first got this off the hob, it was really quite hot, but I've left it to cool for a couple of minutes. So I'm going to take it over here now, and then I'm going to add my egg. Now, there's 2 really important reasons why we don't want it really hot. The first one is if we added the egg to hot milk, then the egg would scramble, and we don't want scrambled eggs. That's completely not what we want. And also, if it's too hot as well, then it's going to kill the yeast. So it needs to be below 40 degrees, otherwise it's going to kill the yeast, which means the yeast isn't going to let off carbon dioxide, and they won't rise at all. They'll just be flat and horrible and stodgy and dense, which is something we don't want. So I'm going to make a little well in the middle here, and then add it gradually. So you just need to use your spoon and add this gradually. So add a little bit at a time. So I'm going to add that and then mix it in. The reason you add a little bit at a time is just in case you have too much to start off with and then it's really gooey, the mixture. So it's a lot better if you just add things gradually when you're cooking I always find, the same with pastry as well, when you're making pastry and you just add a little bit of water to your pastry, because it's horrible when you add too much. In fact, I can feel that this is coming together really well, and I'm just wondering how much more of this I need. So there's a fair bit left in my pan, but I think if I add all of it, then it will just be really gooey and horrible. I don't want it to be gooey and horrible. So I think that's enough actually. I'll show you how much I've got left in my pan. I've got that much left. I don't need it. So don't just add it all at once. Just a little bit at a time. So that's ready now to knead. So I'm just going to put some flour on the side. So make sure you've got enough flour down, but not too much flour, otherwise it will really dry it out. I'm just going to sprinkle some flour onto the side there. Smooth that out with my hand. Put the dough on. Scrape it off here. It feels really lovely and warm. And then that needs to be kneaded for 10 minutes. So while you're kneading it, you're stretching that gluten out. So if you can imagine the gluten being like a spring, and then air is being added into that. So that's going to make it rise eventually when it's proving, and then also when it's cooking. I've been kneading this now for about 10 minutes, and actually I did need to add a little bit more of this mixture. So because it wasn't stretching as much. So if you do need to add a little bit more, then literally just drizzle it in, and then you can fold it into the mixture, and it's made mine a lot more stretchy. So I would recommend actually initially to probably add enough liquid so it is quite gooey but not massively gooey. So it does need to be quite stretchy, I think, this type of dough, maybe a bit more than possibly normal bread. So just stretch it out as much as you can. Just imagine that gluten just needs stretching, and it's really good to use the palms of your hand and all your strength just to stretch it out. So there we go. I think mine's nice and kneaded, and I've actually pushed a lot of the flour away because it's got the butter in. It doesn't really stick to the side, so kind of push your flour away. Don't use too much flour. I'm just going to put a really thin amount there, and then once you've kneaded it for 10 minutes, I'm just going to get mine into an even shape, and then you need to cut it into 12 pieces. So I'm going to get my knife. So when you're cutting something, start by cutting it in half, like that. And then you need to cut that into 6 pieces. So cut it in half again, cut them both in half again, and then each of these pieces needs to be cut into 3. So I think these donuts are going to be fairly smallish donuts actually, but I think that will be okay. They're obviously going to rise, so we're going to leave them to prove for 45 minutes. I'm just going to make sure I've got fairly evenish shape here. Yeah, that's about even, isn't it? 12, and then roll them into a ball and then put them on your tray. I've now rolled them into 12 equal shaped balls, and they need covering over with cling film. And what I would recommend is to put them somewhere warm, because the yeast obviously needs warmth to work. So I'm going to put mine over by my oven, and I've put my oven on, and then eventually I think when my oven's heated up, I might just put it in the grill area just to heat up. So you don't want it too hot, but you do want them warm, and they should hopefully, fingers crossed, double in size. Okay, it's been 45 minutes, and I'm going to get my little dough balls out. Wow, and they've risen so much. So they probably doubled in size, maybe even a little bit more than doubled. So I'm just going to put them down here. Meanwhile, over here, I've started heating my oil up. So I've put it on the top temperature for now while it heats up. But when you're cooking, if it gets too hot, then remember to turn it down, because you don't want them to burn on the outside. And most importantly, you don't want to burn yourself. That's the most important thing. So back over here, I've got a rolling pin, and I'm going to carefully take the cling film off, hoping, yeah, that's fine, it hasn't stuck to any of them. So let's have a look here. So I'm going to put my first one here and just kind of roll it around in my hand like that. In fact, I'm just going to get my flour out again, because I think I might need to put a tiny bit on the top, but I really don't want to put too much on. I've already got some on the side. So I'm going to try and make it as round as possible, and then I'm going to flatten it out. So flatten it out, and I'm going to get my cutter here. I'm quite excited about this. And cut the middle out to make my ring. And then you can always use your middle bits to make some mini donuts as well. So I'm going to keep all my middle bits there, and I'm just going to cut out my 12 donuts now. I've flattened all 12 donuts and I've cut the middle out. They're all kind of varied sizes, but hopefully that will be fine. So my oil is ready. I've just checked it. It's really, really hot, and I've turned it down slightly. I've got one of these metal spoons to use, and it's really, really important that you use something metal and don't use something plastic, otherwise obviously it's going to melt. So I've used a metal slotted spoon. You could use a metal skewer, just anything that's metal. You could use some metal tongs, but do not use anything plastic, otherwise it will melt. So I'm going to try my first one now. So I've got, this is the best one as well. So this is the one that's the fluffiest. I'm going to take it over. I'm going to put it on here to lower it down. So don't just drop it in. Make sure you lower it with something. Oh, look at that. It's beautiful. That's sizzling away nicely. And I'm going to put 3 in, I think, at a time. That looks like it's gone brown. In fact, I'm going to go for 2. Oh, it's gone brown already. Wow, look at that. And then that can go for a second longer. And then over like that, and that can come out. So I've just got some kitchen roll here. You don't necessarily need to use kitchen roll, but I think I'm going to use it just to drain off a little bit of the excess fat. And then I'm going to pop it straight into here. So I've got my sugar and cinnamon, and then turn it over like that. And then that can go on my tray. So I've got, and then you need to do that with all 12 of them. So they cook so quickly. They literally cook in a matter of seconds. And these are the finished donuts. I'm really, really pleased with them. They've turned out really well. They're really fluffy inside. I've tried one of the little ones, so you can make some little ones with the holes you've cut out. They taste absolutely delicious, really crispy. I hope you enjoy them. Thank you for watching.